The following special program is brought to you by the American Jewish Committee's Community of Conscience, made possible by the generosity of KPRC TV, HEB, Memorial Hermann, Linda Laurel Media, Big A Productions, Frost Bank, the Jewish Herald Voice, and many others. And now, as we seek to help bridge our divides, please welcome the Honorable Sylvester Turner, Mayor of the City of Houston.
Good evening. I'm Mayor Sylvester Turner. This year has been trying for many of us as the COVID-19 pandemic has upended our lives. But the pandemic has also given us reason to be incredibly thankful this Thanksgiving. We are grateful for our life, grateful for each other, and grateful for all essential workers who have protected us, cared for us, and kept our community moving forward during challenging times. This weekend, as families and friends gather, it is an opportunity to celebrate our cherished values. It is also an opportunity to join the American Jewish Committee's Community of Conscience. United, we stand against the divisive rhetoric that has tarnished America's political discourse. We are Texans, we are Americans, and we are Houston strong when we stand together.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Linda Laurel.
Hello, everyone. I'm Chris Gutierrez. Tonight is all about love for our country and our fellow Americans. Welcome to America's Table.
As you gather with your families this Thanksgiving weekend, Chris and I hope that you will enjoy the next hour as we take you on a journey of hope for humanity, celebrating the diverse roots and shared values of all Americans. And what better place to do that than right here in Houston, Texas, the most diverse city in the nation. We will share inspiring stories and enjoy more performances from local artists as we celebrate our uniqueness and what makes us the same. And perhaps most important, we invite you to listen and learn about those who might not look like you, or pray like you, or love like you, or vote like you.
The recent presidential election has amplified the deep divisions within our country, making the mission of America's Table more important than ever. The American Jewish Committee and Congressman Al Green created Houston's first celebration of America's Table back in 2008. But the concept dates back to another fraught time in our nation's history, shortly after the terrorist attacks of September 11th, 2001. David Harris, CEO of AJC, explains, all Americans were invited to grieve the loss of innocent lives, express empathy with the families and friends who ache for them, but also celebrate our unity and diversity as a nation created by immigrants of all faiths searching for a better life.
Fast forward 19 years, and we return to the table, wounded and weary from a global pandemic and reckoning with polarization, fear, rising racism, and bigotry, not to mention that contentious presidential election. Yet we return to the table grateful for the gift of life, for the blessing of each other, and for the democracy and freedoms our nation bestows on its citizens, even as we work to perfect those freedoms.
Good evening. My name is Bobby Lapin, and apart from being a native Houstonian, I have the great joy and privilege of serving on the National Executive Council of AJC, the American Jewish Committee. AJC is a leading global advocate for the values and the protections which protect not only Jews as a distinct minority, but which protect and celebrate each of the ethnic communities which make up the tapestry of the community that we are all privileged to share together. It was in October of 1863, in the wake of the battles of Gettysburg and Vicksburg, that Abraham Lincoln issued a proclamation declaring that Americans should set aside a national day of Thanksgiving in November to acknowledge with gratitude the many blessings of this country, of our country. Today and this weekend, as each of us gather together with family and friends to renew this great tradition, Thanksgiving, we at AJC are delighted to gather with leaders from our faith and ethnic communities, Christians and Muslims, Hindus and Kurds, Blacks, Latinos, and Asians, to fulfill President Lincoln's mandate by declaring as one community that one of the greatest blessings of this nation, which should be celebrated, is our rich diversity. I know of no city which draws greater strength and cohesiveness from its diverse communities than our city of Houston. Together we reject xenophobia and hate of any stripe and in any form. Together we overcome the challenges of Mother Nature that she may put in our path, be it by wind, or rain, or even virus. And we emerge ever stronger. Together, we honor that beautiful motto that appears on our currency, E pluribus unum, out of many, one.
Out of many, one. Out of the millions of immigrants who now call America home, each one has a story. Each story representing a cherished thread in the fabric of our communities.
We are blessed that in Houston, our tapestry is indeed rich with color and history and culture. Here is the first of 4 inspiring immigrant stories we are proud to share with you tonight.
Hello, Houston. My name is Hilario Yanez, and this is my American story of how I went from homeless to Fortune 500 company. I was born in Mexico, in Tampico, Tamaulipas, and my mother decided to bring me to the United States at the age of 1 so that one day we can live the American dream. Fast forward, we end up in the city of Houston. We end up homeless and no place to go. But by the grace of God, we found Star of Hope Homeless Shelter. And that's exactly what the Star of Hope Homeless Shelter did. It brought hope to my family and it brought hope to my mother. And eventually she was able to find houses to clean and get back on her feet. I grew up in a rough neighborhood. I grew up without my father in my life. And I grew up as an immigrant. But if it wasn't for my American values and this love for this country, I would not be here today. I value faith, family, and freedom. And as a result, I am standing here in my alma mater, the University of Houston, as a first-generation college graduate and very fortunate enough to be working for a Fortune 500 company now. As an immigrant, I understand that we live in the greatest country on earth. It is an honor and a privilege to be in this country. I want to thank the University of Houston. I want to thank Star of Hope Homeless Shelter and many other organizations out there that provided the resources and tools for me to succeed and continue to live the American dream. So thank you, and thank you to the United States of America.
Hilario received 2 business degrees from the University of Houston. And Chris, he says he is so thankful to be a DACA recipient, which allows him to continue the pursuit of his American dream.
And like many in Houston's burgeoning Hispanic community, Hilario grew up in the East End, home to more than 107,000 Houstonians and one of the fastest growing areas in the Bayou City.
Magnolia Park is one of the oldest Hispanic neighborhoods in the city of Houston. And back in the 1920s, Mexicans were fleeing the Mexican Revolution and they started migrating to the neighborhood. And then back in 1926, the city of Houston annexed Magnolia Park. And since then, it has been predominantly Hispanic and multi-generational families live here and do business here.
This area has changed tremendously since I was born. I was born in the Magnolia Central Park area. There were very sharp divisions between the Anglo community and the Hispanic community.
Magnolia Manchester is an extraordinarily resilient community. It's a community with one of the most historic stories in the entire city of Houston. Historic Harrisburg preceded Houston and served as one of the capitals of the Republic of Texas and was actually burned down by the General Santa Anna before the Battle of San Jacinto. And so you have not only the history of the Republic in the state of Texas taking place in Magnolia, Manchester, you also have an area with rich access to the Port of Houston, which allows the entire world to have access to our goods and services.
I think one of the things that makes the neighborhood special and why people aren't moving away is because of the green space that we have here, the culture that we have here, the traditions that we have here, and I think it's also family.
We used to go to Hidalgo Park, and it was Mexican Park, because that's where all the Mexicanos would go. And we would gather there for Easter. We would gather there for different holidays, for birthdays, for anniversaries.
Magnolia Manchester demonstrates our need for a recognition of our rich history, our need to invest in people, and our need to connect communities more coherently so people know the vast resources that exist in their own backyard and the impact and the place that they have for Houston as well as the world.
So in the East End, there's a lot of growth happening closer to downtown. It hasn't gotten to Magnolia Park yet, but there's a lot of people out there that are doing their part to make it the place to be. Magnolia Park itself is just a beautiful piece of property with a beautiful bridge, with a beautiful trail.
We will continue to grow as a community as other people recognize the importance and the need to invest in Magnolia, Manchester. It's our ability to share with the rest of the city of Houston that family is critical and so important. And we are resilient because we work together. And we need people to just be able to recognize the rich history that exists in our own backyard. And then we need to empower our community with education so that way they can succeed in the 21st century economy as well.
And now we'd like to share with you the first of several readings to help us reflect on America's freedoms and opportunities that we hold so dear.
When we came to America, the insightful question of all our children innocently asked compel us to reconnect with our past. When our families came to America, how they got here, what they found, why they came. At every table, the answers are different, but much the same. Many of us were immigrants and refugees from all of the regions of the world, fleeing the afflictions of poverty, oppression, and brutality.
Drawn by the promise of a better life, we chose America, and she took us into a safe harbor. Not every journey was easy. The first arrivals sometimes shunned those who followed. Not every journey was voluntary. The first African slaves landed in Jamestown a year before the Pilgrims settled in Plymouth. Not every journey was righteous. Native Americans were devastated by a new nation's need to conquer, cultivate, and build. Not every journey was smooth. Obstacles were placed in the paths of too many.
I had always hoped that this land might become a safe and agreeable asylum to the virtuous and persecuted part of mankind, to whatever nation they might belong, by George Washington.
Ultimately, America's answer to the intolerant man is diversity. The very diversity which our heritage of religious freedom has inspired. Robert Kennedy.
All great change in America begins at the dinner table, by Ronald Reagan.
Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountains, majesties, all of the fruited plains.
That was simply beautiful, and a big thanks to all the talented students representing another treasure in our midst, Houston's Kinder High School for the Performing and Visual Arts.
HSPVA has a spectacular new campus near the Theater District in downtown Houston. About 3 miles to the south and east is 3rd Ward, home to nearly 40,000 proud Black Houstonians. Fun fact, music icon Beyonce was born there.
Yes, she was. Travel about 10 more miles north and west of 3rd Ward, and you'll find the historic community of Acres Homes, sometimes affectionately called the 44.
I think anybody who's from 3rd Ward is very, very proud of being from 3rd Ward. Because of the history, the legacy of people here, we have a historically African-American college, Texas Southern University, Jack Yates High School, which has its own accolades, and a lot of people who have really done some amazing things culturally, educationally, in all the different aspects of our community. Many other people moved in during the 50s and 60s. They were mostly African-American, and I think what 3rd Ward has given given a lot of people is a sense of belonging, a sense of roots, a sense of family. And that's what the Black churches in Third Ward area have done. And I think that's what a lot of people feel, that they are rooted in this community. And that's what's so important about Houston. One of the best things I love about Houston is its diversity. And I've traveled other places, I've lived in other countries, and what I like about here is that you can see some of all kinds of people most everywhere you go, and I love that.
Acres Homes formed back in about 1914 during the time of World War I. And they brought with them, of course, this agricultural concept that you still see alive in Acres Homes today. Today is such a hodgepodge because gentrification is starting to happen. Many of the original families have now moved out or have deceased. And so it's really changing, but you do see transitioning happening, of course, and you see residential, some a little upper scale, but then you also see some of the rural remnants are still here. There's still some horses around, and I like that because I have one here myself. This is still a thriving community, and I think that's one of the great things about what's happening right now is you see a resurgence of entrepreneur visionaries who are now calling this generation back to Acres Homes and say, hey, this is a sweet spot to live. We're only 10 miles from downtown. We're only 15 minutes from the Galleria and 15 minutes from the airport. It's nestled right here. We're in the heart of Houston. And so to see this resurgence of energy, I think a renaissance is taking place that's going to help to revitalize it. You do see some hope because people like Slim Thug, the rapper, is reinvesting. He's from Acres Homes. People like Burns Barbecue and that family is reinvesting, doing community development in this community. It's a story waiting to be told about the greatness of Houston. If you overlook the treasure that Acres Homes is, then Houston loses value. Well, my favorite thing about Acres Homes are the relationships that you have with people. That's a home-like environment that says we're all a family here, but we've never allowed even our transitioning into a cosmopolitan kind of city to cause us to lose our identity as this is our uniqueness. We're gonna have our horses, we're gonna ride, we're gonna enjoy, and children and families love that, but we're just as sophisticated as any other neighborhood in the city. It gives you a feeling that you can kind of be what you wanna be. You can be a scholar, PhD, but you can also get on the horse and ride and enjoy yourself.
I think it's interesting how all colors on the scale of the lights and paint all come together in this black. I think it's beautiful. And it took a long time for me to really see the beauty in my skin, this texture. I have a fondness of it now. It's more than familiar, this feeling that's peculiar, to smile and cry for the people who identify how joys and pains are quite similar. It's the crown and the thorn, to be hated and adorned. Actually, what's happening internally is really more interesting, my black. It's a paradox cauldron, calling the kettle and the pots and Negro. Y'all know, I know my black, right? It's to be addressed and attacked, to be adorned and rejected, to be admired and unprotected, to be desired and protected. This reasoning of black is a seasoning of black. Y'all, I'm seasoned in black, right? But lately, I'm feeling a lot closer to bland brown rice. Now, usually, when I say that in front of people, they thinking I'm saying brown rice that's bland. No, that's not the case at all. What I mean by bland brown rice is Sandra, Michael, Tamir. So lately, I'm feeling a lot closer to bland brown rice. My black is aware any time when I wear a black hoodie at night. I'm fond of my black since I found my black within people, in places, in everything, y'all. I'm a noun in my black. I got this fondness of black since I found my black. I got this joy in my black since I found my black. I got this peace in my black since I found my black. I got this dance in my black since I found my black. I got this love in my black since I found my black, especially since I'm fond of you.
Such a powerful performance from Houston's own celebrated poet and writer, Outspoken Bean. Thank you for sharing your heart and, of course, your talent.
And Chris, from performance art to the art of medicine, we really are very fortunate here in Houston to have such accomplished, committed professionals in our community. Here's another inspirational immigrant story.
Hi, I'm Ouida Westney. My father was an obstetrician and gynecologist. My mother was a nurse educator turned university professor. Right now, I'm a professor of surgery in the Department of Urology at MD Anderson Cancer Center. Strangely enough, our story begins with Albert Schweitzer. My father was attending junior college at West Indies College, which is now Northern Caribbean University in Mandeville, Jamaica. This was in 1947 or 48. He was in the class of one of his favorite teachers. The question posed in class was, who is the most important person in the world? Now, there were a lot of names that were thrown around. John D. Rockefeller, Winston Churchill, Henry Ford. The answer the teacher was looking for was the German-born French philosopher, surgeon, and humanitarian, Albert Schweitzer. At that moment, that's when my father decided that he wanted to heal the sick, help those who were needy, and teach those who needed to be taught. And so that was the decision that translated into our family leaving Jamaica and going to the United States, because at that time, there were no four-year colleges in the island of Jamaica or any way to get an advanced degree. So my father finished what was a junior college and then waited for his opportunity to go to the United States. And that came when he went to South Lancaster, Massachusetts at Atlantic Union College. And although he wanted to start with pre-med studies, he really initially ended up doing a degree in history. He thought it was important, for him to have something that he could also teach, because he needed to work his way through school. And he was a janitor, night watchman. His family worked very hard in Jamaica, but really did not have the resources to help him, although they did instill in him how important an education was. So he successfully finished his degree. He was encouraged by a professor to go to Columbia University in New York and do a master's degree, and so he did that. He began corresponding with my mother, still in Jamaica, and when he finished his degree in 1953, he returned to Jamaica, primarily with the goal of them getting married, and that's exactly what happened. They were married in December 1954. The following year, they returned to the United States, and at this time it worked out perfectly for him to get his pre-medical studies done, again at Atlantic Union College. And when he finished this, he immediately took the MCAT. He started medical school at Howard University in Washington, D.C. He completed that in 1961, and during that time my oldest brother was born. Several years after that, my other brother, middle brother, and then I was born as well. He was the assistant director of the obstetrics and gynecology department in the Baltimore City hospitals for a year or two, and then we all returned back to Washington, D.C. Initially, he had a private practice, which was very successful, but there was still something missing. He did not fulfill that other component from Albert Schweitzer regarding teaching. He got the opportunity to rejoin the faculty at Howard University, and he stayed there for the remainder of his career. Meanwhile, my mother got her PhD and became an associate dean of the School of Human Ecology at Howard University as well. And this was an important part of our family's legacy. We all have either worked or gotten one of our degrees at Howard University. And so it's really strange that this all began with Albert Schweitzer.
We are each part of America's journey.
We did not leave history behind like unwanted baggage at immigration's door.
We are not always on a first-name basis with one another.
But we quickly became acquainted in our daily surroundings.
We are at home.
In some parts of the world, our differences would be threatening.
We feel enriched.
In America, our differences resonate in our names, language, food, and music. They inspire art and produce champions and leaders.
We feel free to disagree.
We are a family, and what is a family gathering without debate?
We believe in fairness.
In America, the loudest voice does not always have the last word, and every voice has a right to be heard.
We act with hope.
Not because life is perfect, but because we are free to face life and all its imperfections on our own terms.
In a sturdy and tested framework of law and government that only works because of the confidence we place in it and in each other. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed to me. I lift up my lamp beside the golden door. Emma Lazarus.
The land flourished because it was fed from many sources, because it was nourished by so many cultures and traditions and peoples. Lyndon B. Johnson.
The essence of America, that which really unites us, is not ethnicity or nationality or religion. It is an idea. And what an idea it is that you can come from humble circumstances and do great things. Condoleezza Rice.
We pause for a moment to once again acknowledge the support of all of our sponsors who help make tonight's program of unity and hope a reality. Here now, a message from tonight's lead sponsor, HEB.
Hi, I'm James Harris, Director of Diversity and Inclusion and Supply Diversity at HEB. Thanksgiving has always been, for me, one of my favorite holidays. It's an opportunity to gather with family and friends, to reflect on the past year, and to really count our blessings.
During 2020, our tables all might look different than they usually do. But today at HEB, we are giving thanks for the ability to serve all of our diverse community, whatever your table may look like.
With the onset of COVID-19, 2020 has been a particularly challenging year, and HEB was at the ready once again. Whether it is our emergency preparedness of our Supply Diversity program or our Be the Change Fund, which to date has given out roughly $1.5 million to those organizations that are geared towards social and voter reform. HEB is there at the ready to step in to aid wherever we can.
Houston is one of the most diverse cities in our nation. And at HEB, we celebrate it with the products on our shelves within our store, as well as the partnerships with the nonprofits and government partners around our community. We give thanks for you and having us as part of your community.
So from our HEB family to yours, happy holidays, happy Thanksgiving.
Hi, my name is Singh. I run a local engineering company by the name of Asani Consultants, which is based in Houston. I was 18 years old when I immigrated to the US along with my parents from India. Initially, my academics took me from University of Houston to University of Texas in Austin, and professionally had some short stints in Washington, D.C., Cleveland, and St. Paul, then back home to Houston. So I've been in Houston since 1988. Houston's been our home ever since. I stand on shoulders of my parents, my mom and dad. My mom, when she was cleaning bathrooms at nursing homes, my dad was sweeping parking lots of gas stations just to cobble together a few dollars to provide for their newly immigrated family. It continues to be a gentle reminder and keeps us grounded, keeps us humble. Those were the challenging times, but the most joyous times ever. When I was a newspaper boy in Houston for the Houston Post, for 2 years, you couldn't take a day off. A day off in a newspaper career's life meant you didn't have a job the next day. waking up at 1:30 in the morning, throwing my 250 newspapers, coming back, power nap, and going back to college were probably the challenging and the most rewarding times. My moral compass has always been my dad, who saw the promise of this great country sitting 15,000 miles away. The promise with no boundaries, the promise with no barriers. And since then, this great city has afforded all of those opportunities to us. I and my family are engaged in many different facets of what we call Houston. We are engaged in the interfaith ministry community very actively. In addition, we have engaged the law enforcement community for the last 15, 20 plus years to ensure that folks from the Sikh community have the opportunities to serve without sacrificing their faith. And many of you may remember that Deputy Sandeep Singh Dhariwal was extended that courtesy of accommodation, and thus his gift continues to fulfill the promise of this great country, this great state, and this great city and the region. And the promise is what my dad said. You come to the US, roll up your sleeves, you work hard, and then surround yourself with good people, and don't change in terms of who you are, what brought you here, what works for you, your values, your beliefs. One doesn't have to sacrifice any of those to really be living the American dream. And those are some of the things that I still value and continue to value and instill in my children. Our immigrant journey is not unique. It's really not about us, we or I. It's really about family, friends, people who have uplifted us. The journey is really about thank yous. It's really about you, Houston, so I thank you.
I love how Bobby Singh describes the promise of America, not having to sacrifice who you are and what brought you here. It's one of the reasons why so many immigrants from around the world choose to come to our shores.
Did you know that more than 145 languages are spoken right here in the greater Houston area? Isn't that incredible?
It is amazing.
It's amazing. In the Asian community alone, there are 27 different cultural traditions. Here's more about one vibrant part of Houston's Asian community, which happens to be the third largest in the nation.
Houston is a wonderful city for the Vietnamese community. Right now, we have the population close to 200,000, and it's boasted with vitality. In 1975, the first wave of refugees that came arrived because Vietnam lost to the communists. And then we have second wave in the 1980s, and also early 1990s would be the refugees, the boat people. And the third wave would be the immigrants that are coming according to the ODP program, orderly departure programs, and other immigration programs.
Growing up with our parents, it was a deep Vietnamese culture. It was always talked about to keep that culture, keep the Vietnamese language, and always think of our ancestors, how we came over here. But then we had our second life, which is go to school. And we were intertwined in the American community and the American culture, and trying to learn both at the same time and trying to balance the two. I grew up to learn that you have to appreciate both. We've grown to have an economic impact in this community. Our cultures in the community where people eat our food, and learning our culture and learning our people.
With all the local business owners, you're talking about all kinds of different restaurants of Vietnamese food, and one of the signature food would be pho. It becomes one of the favorite food, not just for Vietnamese, but also for Houstonians. What's so special about the Vietnamese community here is the heart. It has a big heart, and it's connected with other communities. We work together in our own age, we can call like international district here in Bel Air. So wonderful to see that right now in Harris County, the Vietnamese language is the third language that's being spoken most in Harris County after English and Spanish.
When we're here in America, we want to become adapted to America. We want everyone to be a part of our culture and learn our food and taste our food and become a part of us. So we welcome everyone, and we want everyone to come over. Everyone knows it's Bel Air Boulevard, but on the Vietnamese side of Bel Air Boulevard, which is the west side of the Beltway 8.
We're very generous, kind, and we collaborate with other communities to thrive. Also, the way that we work together to handle and cope with all the disaster, like the Allison flood, Hurricane Ike, and Katrina, and most recently is the Harvey flood, and now we are in COVID-19.
Houston itself just being a melting pot. I'm interracially married, so I'm married to a Mexican American. So my kids being mixed, I mean, it's just continuing that American dream.
We're very thankful for the opportunity to realize our American dreams. And we have so much hope and pride. We're just so much thankful for the vitality and the hope for the future.
We are each responsible for keeping America on course.
Are we there yet? The children ask. We know the answer. We pursue justice, but we still have a ways to go.
We celebrate freedom, but endlessly debate what it means to be free. Our table is brimming, but not everyone receives a fair portion.
Progress can be slow as we propose and protest, argue and advocate, but we are grateful to be part of this vigorous democracy.
We enjoy its unparalleled privileges, accept its obligations, and defend its values. To pursue our dreams while helping others, to advance our convictions while respecting others, to prepare our children for the gift of the American journey.
The best things and the best people rise out of their separateness. I'm against a homogenized society because I want the cream to rise. Robert Frost.
It is never too late to give up your prejudices. Henry David Thoreau.
In diversity, there is beauty and there is strength. Maya Angelou.
Hello, I'm Dr. David Callender, President and CEO of the Memorial Hermann Health System. Every day, our workforce cares for individuals who represent Greater Houston's remarkable diversity. And we know that by truly embracing and celebrating that diversity, we can become stronger and better together. In response to recent acts of unspeakable injustice, Memorial Hermann has taken steps to accelerate our efforts in advancing equity, diversity, and inclusion throughout our system. Because we believe that making positive change within our walls will lead to positive change throughout our community and ultimately help us create a healthier Houston for all.
We are the stewards of America, her ideals and institutions, her cities and natural beauty. We are entrusted to understand America's past and guide her future, to create an even more just America that is secure and free, abundant and caring for all her inhabitants. We are thankful for the freedom to worship. We are thankful for the freedom to speak our minds. We are thankful for the freedom to change our minds.
We are thankful for the freedom to chart our lives. We are thankful for the freedom to work for a better world. We are thankful for the freedom to celebrate this day. This country will not be a good place for any of us to live in unless we make it a place for all of us to live in. Theodore Roosevelt.
We must be free, not because we claim freedom, but because we practice it. William Faulkner.
I try to teach through my opinions, through my speeches, how wrong it is to judge people on the basis of what they look like, the color of their skin, whether they are men or women. Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
The late Justice Ginsburg also said this: America is known as a country that welcomes people to its shores, all kinds of people. The image of the Statue of Liberty with Emma Lazarus's famous poem, she lifts her lamp and welcomes people to the Golden Shore, where they will not experience prejudice because of the color of their skin or the religious faith that they follow. Our final immigrant story this evening embodies Justice Ginsburg's words.
My name is Martin Fein. I've been involved in real estate development in Houston for the last 30 years, running my company, Martin Fein Interests, which is primarily engaged in the development of Class A apartment homes. My parents were Holocaust survivors. We immigrated to the United States from Germany in 1949 when I was 2 years old. My parents, Selena and Eli Fein, were both from Warsaw, Poland. Between them, they lost 11 siblings and both their parents, who all perished in the concentration camp of Treblinka. My mother, Selena, escaped from the Warsaw Ghetto after several unsuccessful attempts. She escaped having acquired false identity documents identifying her as a Polish Christian orphan. And with those documents, she was able to procure a job working for a pro-Nazi German family in their restaurant. There she survived the war in perpetual fear of being discovered. My father, Eli, was one of the last survivors of the Warsaw Ghetto. He fought in the uprising there in April of 1943 and spent the balance of the war between 4 different concentration camps. My father barely survived. He was discovered weighing just 80 pounds, but was nursed back to health in a nearby Catholic hospital. My parents met in Munich at the offices of the Joint Distribution Committee, where my father was working helping survivors search for other relatives who might have survived. They fell in love, were married in 1946, and I was born in 1947. My parents immediately applied for a visa to immigrate to the United States, and they were able to obtain a visa in 1949. And in July of 1949, the 3 of us sailed into New York Harbor. The immigration authorities in New York asked my parents if they had a preference as to which city they would like to settle in. Not having any relatives in the United States at all, they didn't have a preference per se. So they were encouraged to settle in Louisville, Kentucky, where I grew up. My parents worked very hard. My father worked 2 jobs simultaneously until he saved enough money to start his own clothing store. And from there, he was able to start building a few single-family homes and a few apartments as well. My mother helped out in the store. She also got some part-time employment in a large department store in downtown Louisville, and ultimately got her real estate license and worked in a bank. After we settled in Louisville, my sister was born in 1950. Life was not easy. My parents gave up many personal pleasures and made many sacrifices so that they could provide a quality education for my sister and for me. I remember well that every night at dinner, my mother had a globe, a world globe on the table, as a metaphor for the entire world being open to us if we worked hard and got an education. In 1973, I moved to Houston, and it was a short time thereafter that my sister and parents followed. I was welcomed to Houston as I'd never been welcomed anywhere before. People were not so much interested by where I came from necessarily, but were more interested in what I might have to offer in order to make some contribution to the city. We are so very grateful that we live in America, the 244-year-old experiment in opportunity and freedom. We're also very thankful that we live in Houston, a city of great diversity and opportunity. I truly believe that our family would not receive the opportunities that we did in any other country in the world. And I'm happy to report that our little family of 3 that sailed into New York Harbor in 1949 is now a family of 21 immediate family members of children and grandchildren. And I'd like to wish all of our neighbors and friends a very safe, happy, and especially healthy holiday season.
And now, on behalf of AJC, we invite all of you to rise up and join the community of conscience.
The community of conscience includes a declaration of 9 principles aimed at rejecting bigotry and amplifying values that unite all Americans. Join us in the spirit of the American motto, E pluribus unum, as we unite across difference, celebrate our diversity, contribute to a shared society, and resolve to advance the welfare of all.
Join us in the spirit of patriotism as we strive proudly and boldly to uphold American ideals of equality, of dignity, and of opportunity for all.
Join us in the spirit of civility as we reject anti-Semitism and all forms of bigotry, incendiary partisanship, whatever its sources, dehumanizing and demonizing rhetoric and threats of violence.
Join us in the spirit of democracy as we reaffirm and reinforce our constitutional systems, seek equal justice for all, and safeguard our fundamental freedoms.
Join us in the spirit of pluralism as we promote mutual respect, not mere tolerance, as the standard for enlightened existence.
Join us in the spirit of inclusiveness as we reach out to and uplift the poorest amongst us, as we welcome the stranger in our midst, and as we fully enfranchise the differently abled.
Join us in the spirit of love as we counter those who purvey hate, intolerance, and incivility, especially those who legitimize their inappropriate practices based on Holy Writ.
Join us in seeking to fulfill the biblical teachings that we are all B'Tselem Elohim, all created in the divine image, the very foundation of human equality.
And join us in pursuing the prophet Isaiah's age-old vision that one day nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore, that peace, love, and unity will reign.
So on this day and on this weekend of all weekends, for the blessings that we enjoy because we are all created in the image of God, and because we choose to sit at America's table together, we acknowledge, as President Lincoln encouraged us to do, our gratitude for the gifts of community that we enjoy in our nation. From our AJC families to yours, happy Thanksgiving.
For more information about joining the community of conscience, just go to our website, click2houston.com, and look at the Voices of Houston page. And Linda, it's been a real pleasure working with you again.
Well, Chris, it has been a joy to executive produce and work with you and all of my former colleagues here at KPRC on such a meaningful project. A huge thank you to KPRC General Manager Jerry Martin and to all of our sponsors who care so deeply about our community and always show up. And to all of you at home, thank you so much for sharing this evening with us.
We leave you now with an eye toward a brighter future, one filled with unity, hope, and love for humanity.
Good night, everybody, and happy holidays.